Welcome to yours
Mine and
and
the
the
truth.
truth. I'm your host, Sabrina Childress.
And I'm your other host, Marianne Kearns.
It's it's going to keep happening, and as long as it makes me mad that there are so many people with their head in the sand, and it must be nice to have your head in the sand. And I hate. I know people are like, well, what do you mean? It must be nice. Speak no evil, hear no evil. That must be nice until it's perpetrated against you. Then we should have understanding. Then we should have compassion. And I say that not even sarcastically, just in real life until it happens to you. Until you've
Until
experienced.
it's relatable.
Yeah, and that's a problem. Which is why the whole microaggression trending thing came up. Because the attempt to try to make others see and understand how what they say and do gives credence and gives power to racism, whether they know it or not, as you said, unintentional or not. That's where it lends to the definition of what people call what is now known as white privilege.
Mm-hmm. So, um, for it to, where am I going with this?
It's okay. Take your time.
I was just thinking about like just the unexamined assumptions. Like we do a workshop in one of our conferences where well, it's just more environmentally related than culturally related, but it's where we talk about the unexamined assumptions and we take time to actually think about what some of those are and write them down and like what our own personal unexamined assumptions is, and like for example in this case that someone else will take care of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is too big for me to make a difference. um oh, I don't do that, so that must be for someone else to correct themselves, right?
Yeah.
Would be something, I guess those would be a couple that would apply to this particular topic, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that people are going to pause and do that?
No.
So how would you bring your own peace of mind in a situation that is unchanged?
I do. I've always operated under the rule that I can only handle and control me. I do in doing that though, I make it a point to correct if I need to correct. If I see a situation, um, I will I will do my best to correct it, whether and correct it in a manner that the situation calls for. So if the situation calls for me to be soft, I'll be soft. If it calls for me to be, kind of direct and aggressive, I will be a direct and aggressive. Um, you know, and there are times where I feel like it's a lost cause. Because that, that old adage of like trying to get, there's no point in trying to get someone to understand something who refuses to understand it. So,
Right.
and it makes me angry. It makes a lot of people angry. It makes the vast majority of the world angry. And then, then you have to consider the language or the stigma that is now in the additional stigma that's put on, which is like, being the angry black or white girl, black or not black, sorry, black woman or black male or person of color, whatever, right? Like being the angry person. Oh, and you're just so aggressive, and aggressive, that term has just been weaponized against people who are pissed off at the injustices railed against them. And it's like, you're calling me aggressive because you want me to keep laying down for you to step on me? Like that makes me aggressive. That makes me aggressive because I'm saying, no, you can't do that. And no, I won't allow you to do that. That type of thing is almost a daily occurrence for some people. I'm not going to say it's a daily occurrence for me. However, like I've said before, I have a United Nations type of family. And even in some of those situations, we have members of my own family who are, pretty racist. I liken it to, a black person coming into a white person's family when their family's racist. It's like, it's the same thing. And if you don't want it done to you, you don't do it to other people. The sad reality is a lot of people, in my opinion, feel that if they take time to change or understand or stop, and think about what they're doing, then that somehow takes away from their identity. It's almost
What do you
like
mean?
people, like for example, the people who carry the Confederate flag. Oh, it's a part of my history. It's who I am. Okay, so if your dad molested your sister and had a baby, that's part of your history too. Do we honor that? No.
Yeah.
Do we say that's who I am? It made me who I am. No, it was a wrong that was righted, right? In so many, languages.
Yeah, there's so many memes that are passed on, repetitive patterns that are passed on from generation to generation, and we don't even know why we do it.
Yeah.
It's because we want to fit in with the culture that we grew up in. And so what I found myself recently doing, like questioning like different holidays.
Okay. Why?
Because we just celebrate them. And then I realized as an adult, like, why are we celebrating them? What actually happened on those days? Like, what is St. Patrick's Day? What is, all of these other holidays besides Christmas and the religious holidays and things, but Columbus Day, right?
Yeah.
And how I don't know that we ever had any big Columbus Day celebrations. Not as a family anyway, but they do Columbus Day parades and they do, it is celebrated. It is usually taken off of work, typically, that type of thing. And then one day you're just like, why did we celebrate Columbus Day?
Yeah.
What's the real meaning? You start to learn the real meaning behind some of these holidays.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I don't want to celebrate that.
It's
because we've always done it.
Yeah. And again, that's yet another example of growing up in a Black household. We learned what Columbus Day really was at an early age. Like, yes, the rest of the world and the schools celebrated and stuff like that. That wasn't a thing for us because we knew that this was a bad person who raped and pillaged and, stole and, did all these horrible things, and we're not going to celebrate that.
And we didn't.
In the same way that, if you think about it, an example or comparison would be the same way Christians whatever, they don't, some of them do, some of them don't celebrate Halloween. Growing up, we didn't celebrate Halloween, and not because of the Mexican, Dias de Muerte, if I said that right. Sorry to all my
El Dia de los Muertos.
Yes, thank you. Not because obviously their meaning is different, right? It has a whole
their Day of the Dead is different than Halloween.
Yeah. So the Devil's Day, right? The Day of the Dead, as far as the American version, is we didn't celebrate that. Like my household, my parents or whatever were like, no, you're not going to do that. And I know a lot of churches even do like, Hallelujah night instead of Halloween, just to give the kids
interesting.
Yeah, a lot of Black churches do that. They're like, okay, well, you'll come to church and we'll do like a Bible study and you'll still get candy and whatever, right?
I hadn't heard of that.
What we'll do, yeah. And so, like, we would either have to go to church or stay home, right? And we're like, and then, like, of course, you go to school and everybody's dressed up. And, we're like, well, we want to dress up because everybody else is dressed up. And that's when a lot of us, and I can speak for me, got the lesson of you're not like everybody else. You don't be like everybody else. If everybody, the old saying, if everybody jumped off a bridge, would you go jump?
Right.
No, right. It's just
so you never went trick-or-treating.
I didn't say never because we were trying to fit in. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so we would like sneak.
Right. I get it. When you're a kid, you don't understand why you're different. You don't want to be different.
Right. You're like, okay, but Jesus, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and then your entire adult life is trying to stand out from the crowd. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. That happened a lot. So like, I think I can only recall going trick-or-treating maybe 3 times in my life. We weren't supposed to go. You know what I'm saying? Like we kind of were like, oh, we'll go over cousin such and such's house tonight. You know what I mean? Like we like snuck out with them. You know,
your secret's blown now, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, my mother knew it because we brought the candy home. So, and then we were and then I think there was, if I do recall, there was like one time where she actually let us go with the neighborhood kids because our neighbor, who's also of the same religion, went to the same church. It's like, okay, we can let them go, whatever. So we all went together. And then that may have happened like once. I want to say no more than twice, but definitely once. And then, my mother ended up keeping all of the candy after it was inspected, of course. And we got like one piece a day, but like she was like,
you got to monitor the sugar intake.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it was like, okay, but at least we're like, we were trick-or-treating. I put on a trash.
Yeah, you felt, yeah.
So anyway, I'm just saying that because that's an example of just, people celebrating something that probably shouldn't be celebrated. For example of how, getting around that. And I say that because like, even like Cesar Chavez and all the rest of those guys, you know what I mean? It's like, why are we celebrating foolishness? Why are we engaging in foolishness? And again, I think the contrast between the two households, or my household and somebody else's, right, is that. And we learned a lot. Like I learned not just about Martin Luther King, on was it Black History Month, right? But I also learned about everybody else. And when I say everybody else, I mean the unsung heroes, right? But and in that, I can honestly say I learned the truth. And what I mean by that is, right, what the history book says about MLK is not necessarily true. What the history book said about Duke Ellington is not necessarily true. What the history books say about, a lot of historical Black figures is not necessarily the truth. It's a version of the truth. It's not. And the reason why I can honestly say that and truly is because the people who lived it are the people who taught me. My grandma dated Duke Ellington. You know what I'm saying? My husband's grandmother, you know what I'm saying, dated Louis Armstrong, was gonna marry him. Like, you know what I'm saying? And like they hung out with Coretta, you know what I'm saying? Like they were, just like you and I are living right now, and I could knock on my neighbor's door and be like, hey, come over for a barbecue. Like that's where they were. They were in it. You know what I'm saying? My grandma, my great grandmother, she was born in 1898. Yeah. So she could tell me how she had to walk from, here to there to get the water. And, she's an actual American Indian. You know what I'm saying? Like she was a princess. So like she could tell me, she told me about her tribe. She told me about what happened. She told me about how she, indoor plumbing happened. You know what I'm saying? Like,
We didn't
and
really talk about these kinds of things growing up, like where our ancestors came from, you know, what our origin is. Those are not conversations that we really had in our family until I was older and could ask questions myself.
I was gonna say, like, how did those conversations come up?
I think those conversations came up because as I started becoming a young adult, people started asking me, "Where are you from?"
Mm,
And not just like, "Where were you born?"
yeah,
But like they started having conversations about where their ancestors were from and where their family came from and their bloodlines and that type of thing. And then I was like, I don't know,
yeah,
you know? And then you start asking some questions and you get a little bit of information. And I'm not even sure to this day if I have all the correct information. I have little bits and pieces of information to associate with, so to speak.
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we have family that are tracing those things on each side. So, I mean, I do have access, I guess, to some of the information, but
And that brings up another point for me, though. A lot of people of color histories have been erased. They've been purposely erased. So how do you track? How do you go backwards, right? You can only go back to a certain point, because it's like, well, then, it's almost like these, clearly you got here because of ancestry, right? Like, moving forward. But just going backwards is like, I can only go to a certain point. And I'm forever blessed that, I had, God rest their souls, and have the family members that, have total recall, right? Like, they're like, no, I can tell you, what happened on this day, and then here's the proof. You know what I mean? Like, literally, grandma like pulled out, the newspapers, and not even the newspapers like the nationally known ones, right? Not the Washington Post, but like the local newspaper that told you all the stuff. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Like,
That we're not persuaded by the
exactly.
media at the
That were
time.
like
Yeah.
on the ground, boots on the ground. Like, yeah, I had lunch with him yesterday. I could tell you. You know what I mean? Like, this is what's happening.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so like, even like the movie right now that's out, Judah and the Black Messiah, which is about Fred Hampton, the assassination of Fred Hampton. I hear a lot of people, oh, I never knew all this, and um, that in the narrative right behind J. Edgar Hoover, and telling the story of like, oh, Fred Hampton was just this terrible guy, and whatever. And they really didn't call it assassination. They were just like, oh yeah, he tried to get us and we took him out, type of thing. I say that because I lived in Maywood. The very house that the Hamptons grew up in was like 3 blocks from where I lived. So we knew, again, when I say the people who were there told us what really happened. So when I went to school, I was admonished a lot, especially when I we moved and I ended up going to a predominantly white school. And they would say stuff like, or omit things, and I'd be like, no. You know what I mean? And I would get in trouble. Like, they're like, you can't, this is what happened. I'm like, how you gonna tell me? Because my grandma, I gotta bring in you know what I'm saying? Like, my grandma could tell you what really happened on the day, the color, you know what I'm saying? All this kind of stuff. And I would get in trouble for disrupting the class. Because I'm like, no, that's not what happened. And even when I went to college, I took writings of Black protests. I took some African American studies classes, and Professor Donald Crumbly, God rest his soul, was just one of my favorite professors. And Crumbly, he was, man, not only did he live these things, right? He took me to see Minister Farrakhan, because he knew them, right? Like,
Wow.
for me at that time, right? It was like, what? Like, these are people on TV, right? Or these are people in your history books, or these are people that are causing a ruckus, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, let me show you the man. Like, literally, we went, and guess what? He also took me to Muhammad Ali's house. Like, not just like, this is where he lives in Chicago. Like, no, come on in, let's have lunch. Let's talk about what you were told, and what, what really happened. Like, I had the opportunity, because these people weren't mythical large characters. They were literally like
real people,
real
real experiences that you could ask your own questions to.
Boom. Like they can tell me their own story. So, and a lot of us have that experience. When I say a lot of them, I'm saying people of color have that experience. I can't speak for the other side, right? It's about, being able to, I can't speak for the other side. I know I have personally had those experiences. So you can't tell me, you know what I mean, what it is and what it isn't in your mind, you know what I'm saying? Because what
right. Or what you've been told, or what your parents have passed down to you as the truth, or we really have to gut check ourselves quite a bit as an adult and start to, they always say like, oh, you can become anything, right? Like, when you're younger, it's such a weird, life is so weird sometimes, because here you are, you're training, like you have this whole mentality when someone's a kid of all these things that you're training them to do, right? And you're educating them on. Mm-hmm. And the mindset is like, yeah, you could be anything. And, those types of things, at least our world, my world, like, I don't know. I'm only speaking for.
Yeah, I grew up with that too.
Yeah, I'm speaking from like just even what I see parents do today. Like, you can become anything. Look at all these amazing examples of what you can do, right? And then the mentality switches as you become an adult, right? And these are adults training you on that.
Yeah.
Who have already been through that same process and realize that, oh, maybe I can't be anything I want to be, or I don't know. I feel like we focus on the wrong things sometimes.
Like, when I say mine, we grew up with that. Exactly. Like, we grew up with that, but with an asterisk, right? It was like, you can be anything, asterisk. You have to work 10 times as harder. You have to, learn how to adapt into a white world, right? A whitewashed world. You have to speak a certain way. You have to wear your hair a certain way. You have to, when you go to college or when you're in these, social settings, you have to learn how to put your pinky up. You have to, and be not so aggressive.
Which I've never even learned to do, which is so weird to me.
Right. Etiquette class. We had etiquette classes.
Never had an etiquette class.
This is how this is how you operate in society. This is how you become successful in a white world. Like, this is how you're going to be successful, even down to the name, right? Like, no one, I shouldn't say no one, because obviously there's hoods around, across America, or however, there's, I was always told about the name, your name. Mm-hmm. I'm typically the only Sabrina in 99.9% of the time.
I'm usually the only Marianne.
And it's like, okay, in doing that, like, people think before they ever see me that I'm a white girl. And they're like, wait, you're Sabrina? And I'm like, yep. Or like, I had an uncle who always, would prefer to use his middle name, Scott, because his first name was Jeffrey, which is not, anything, but he feel like Scott would get him in the door more often. And guess what? It did. Like, if he said it Jeffrey, yeah, like that those type of things are like, learn how to fit into this world. And now I feel like there's even more of a reoccurrence, or these waves, right, over the ebbs and tides, whatever, over the decades, right, where it's like this high of like, no, live in your truth, and it's okay to be unapologetically Black, right? And then there's like these like, don't be so Black. And then it's like, okay, no, it's okay to be Black. There's like, no, don't be so Black. Then it's like, you know what I mean, like, create. And I think Tyler Perry, honestly, Lord, he said it on, I'm trying to think of the name of the show. He's like, I don't write for white America. I've never written for white America. I don't care what white America thinks. I write for Black people. I write for people of color. I write for Latinos. This is who I write for, because this is our experience. And that's why I'm so successful. When he said that, it really struck something in me, just because I try to write for the spectrum. And it's hard to, as an author, like, it's hard to write for the spectrum, because it takes so much more to be that much more inclusive, right? And in your real life, right, in your waking life, that's okay. But when you're writing and you're really trying to grasp an experience, a specific experience, writing across the spectrum is a beast. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's almost damn near impossible.
Yeah, because isn't the whole point is you're trying to make it relatable? Isn't that the reason why?
Absolutely. And
right.
then I had to question myself, like, why am I trying to make this relatable for white people? When he said that, that's when the went off for me. And I was like, why am I doing that? And I mean, and I know why, right? Like, I know I'm trying to be inclusive because that's just who I am, like I said, in the rest in my working life. However, when I'm writing, I'm trying to push all that in there. And I shouldn't do that.
Because that's kind of like, to me, it makes me think of like speakers who are God-fearing people, that they go up on stage and they don't really bring God into the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because they want to appeal to more of the masses of the people, like make it more generalized, like there's a higher power, whatever that higher power is for you.
Yeah.
Which I can understand. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way of doing that.
I feel like there is. And
I do think that you can tell when someone isn't being authentic, when they want to talk about God and they feel like they're holding back.
Yeah. I think that's when I say right or wrong, it's like,
you're like, oh, these are great motivational quotes. Yeah. But I'm not connecting with them and like bringing them,
Yeah. Into the fold.
In as my own.
So I want to, I'm going to read one of these things just because we're on here. An example. Sorry, I was pulling it.
Anyway. Well, while you're doing that, I mean, it honestly broke my heart when my nephew came to visit recently, and he did give me permission to share, but he is Hispanic, living in South Georgia, very suburban, like not suburban, rural, like Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I was just, he had some new tattoo. He had some tattoo. Like, I haven't seen my nephew in a little while, and now he's like an adult, right? Mm-hmm. Making his own decisions and things. And I haven't really connected with him in a little while. And he was just kind of sharing with me some of the things that he's heard when he's been there, right? In a Confederate state, being someone of non-white descent, right? Okay. And how just, like go back to the fields, people thinking he's Mexican, making him feel just comments, right? These aggressions that we've been talking about, making him feel like he doesn't belong. And so this tattoo was something about like pride, like family pride, like having pride in yourself, that type of thing. Yeah. As a reminder. And I hadn't really thought about what it must feel like for him to be taken away from his family here. Not necessarily taken away, but and to move into another place that maybe isn't as accepting.
So
it isn't as accepting, clearly. Yeah. Of him being there. Or it feels like he has a certain role there, right? Yeah. And that's it. And how that might be stifling him, right? Yeah. It really works on a person's psyche. Yeah, I mean, he's not experienced that before. I don't know that he's experienced that here in Florida, since we're kind of a melting pot here, or if that is just specific to the place that he's at in Georgia and their mentality in that area. But I'm thinking as like a young adult, how hard that must be for him to like get a job, right? Or what that means about him growing into being successful, society contributing person, right? Or, just a lot of different things that were brought up during that conversation that I hadn't really considered before.
Have you had to consider them?
What do you mean?
So when you say you hadn't really considered them, were there ever instances where you've had to consider them? Like,
no, I didn't even think twice, honestly, about it being an impediment to him being there. I guess I never really expected people to treat him that way.
Yeah. Do you ever check a person or correct a person if you're, or have you ever been in a situation where you've had to be like, hey, pull someone's coattail about something they said or did to another person?
I don't have an example that comes to mind. As you know, I'm not typically a confrontational person.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentality growing up was that those types of conversations would be confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
As I grow as I grow over the years, I still find myself hesitating in times when I should say something.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna read these two examples, okay?
Okay.
So here's the scenario. Scenario 1. The statement is, I don't mean to sound racist. The alternative is, can we have a conversation about why what I said was racist? I want to learn.
Okay.
The why, according to EF magazine here, is validation is critical. Even if your intention was not to say something offensive,